Ayahuasca, yes.
I'll take
Ayahuasca. And so, in the theme of ayahuasca, you all get some tea. Tea. I don't know if I can get you in the back. I'm going to try. All right, watch out, everybody. These are not going as far back as I thought they would. All right, last one. There we go. Okay. All right. Ayahuasca, the drug that goes by very many names. So other names for dry ayahuasca include huasca, I don't know how to pronounce most of these, daime, the tea, la purga, ma, purgatory, tres equis, Earl Grey tea, dirt martini, and of course, kombucha. I may have made up some of these names. Ayahuasca is different from DMT. DMT was actually a previous show I did. DMT, however, is the psychoactive component within ayahuasca. So just as a sort of recap, here was my experience immediately after smoking DMT.
Any entities? Yeah, they're like, hanging out. They're in a garden thing, like, doing handshake things. Holy shit. Like, it's modern. Like, you'd think with DMT, like, it would take you to some ancient place. Still seeing the sacred geometry things. It's like you walked in the middle of a scene. I also have incredible memory problems right now. Like, I have a very difficult time remembering how I got horizontal.
And that's DMT. And that was pretty much the length of it also. Ayahuasca, a little bit different. So with that in mind, I'm going to take you guys through my recent ayahuasca experience. Yes, that's right. You are all in store for the first PowerPoint rendition of an ayahuasca trip. The first thing it starts off with is me right outside the place where the ceremony was being held, and this is kind of a temperature check for how I was feeling.
Well, I'm standing outside the ceremony lodge. I'm excited. I'm a little bit nervous. I'm also really freaking hungry. It's been a little while since I've last eaten. I'm freezing, so just any tea will be great at this point. Yeah, all right, I want to go in. Wish me good luck.
So young, so very young and naive. So the tea was not hot, as I hoped, and not very filling either. They don't tell you that. I thought it was going to be more like a meal. So they say that ayahuasca is 10 years of therapy. So this was me before the ceremony, and this is me after. A little bit of a transformation. No, okay, so here was more of the onset of the ceremony. So before the ceremony, our shaman and her sort of co-shaman gave us a little spiel. And she essentially said, surrender is the name of the game. And so I found a meme that perfectly encapsulates that. Ayahuasca is telling you, congratulations, you are being rescued. Do not resist. That is a pretty good synopsis of what ayahuasca feels like sort of in hindsight. It's difficult, but it's there to help. So that was her kind of like warning, and then we drank the tea. So the taste. The taste of ayahuasca is, I would describe for many of you as a dirt milkshake. For any of my Harry Potter aficionados in the audience, it's a little bit like the Polyjuice potion. It's no fun. So after you drink it, there is a period where you are convinced it has not worked. It starts immediately after you drink it and right until it has definitely started to work. And this is what it feels like. I don't feel anything. Maybe it doesn't, and then ayahuasca comes in. Where it was a feeling of completely sinking into the floor and almost through the floor at a certain point. I was kind of actually digging it. This is how I would represent the feeling. After I sat down, I felt this incredible pressure on my head that I really loved. It was like these cosmic hands were holding my head as I laid on this hardwood floor. It felt a little bit like this baby really digging this head massage. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this is working so well. Ayahuasca feels like a cosmic mother holding my hand And then I realized after a little while, I was wearing a hat. And and so you might think, okay, well, did that probably detracted from your experience. It wasn't a cosmic entity holding your head. It was just that you had decided to put on a hat that day. But weirdly enough, and this is where the ayahuasca really helps, wearing a hat actually made it a lot better because I realized that I put it on my head, that I had thought ahead of time I wanted to be comfortable. And in a way, I was my own maternal cosmic force. And that sort of sounds trite, but it really kind of guided me into a feeling of connection with my mother. So here are some photos of me that I remember thinking about with me and my mom that give you a feeling of our relationship. After that, and then there are a lot of Harry Potter references in here, people. Thank you in the back. So in The Prisoner of Azkaban, Harry Potter 3, for experts out there, at one point Harry Potter thinks that his father has come and rescued him from Dementors, and it turns out, in fact, to just be himself in the future using the time turner. Okay, so that was my experience with a hat. So that was probably the first 60 seconds of ayahuasca. Lock in for the rest. Now breathing. At first it felt a little bit like this, where I was having real difficulty opening my mouth. But then I eventually did get it open, and breathing felt a little bit more like one of those 5 Gum commercials where you're like on a bed of like spearmint balls that's like sort of a loudspeaker, and it feels very refreshing apparently. Anyway, that's what breathing felt like. Guys, I'm doing my best. PowerPoints and GIFs to show it. Thank you. It's very hard to represent these feelings. Okay, so that was breathing. At this point, I decided to sit up, and I looked down, and I noticed something also kind of banal, but also kind of extraordinary. My hip flexor. When I sit crisscross applesauce, professional term, usually my knees are up by my chin. But I looked down, and they were just on the ground like I was in frickin' lotus position. And I called over the shaman to be like, I need you to look at this. And am I really sitting like this? And this was the co-shaman, and he was like, yep, you're really sitting like this. You got a lot more tension to release, too. So that was great, just, if nothing more than for opening up your hip flexors. At this point, I unfortunately had to go to the bathroom, and the bathroom presents a big challenge because the bathroom represents a mirror, and everybody knows that's the worst idea is to look into a mirror while tripping, but it was inevitable. This was what I saw. I started to see this is my dad, and this is a face swap app. Or like a gender swap app thing, which did indeed confirm that I look a shit ton like my dad. And that was very horrifying, as you can imagine, and it was a whole thing. But then I kind of thought more deeply, and I was like, where have I seen this before? What great text that I grew up on have I seen this before? And I realized I'd seen it in The Lion King, when he looks into the reflection pool and he sees Mufasa, but really it's Simba, and Simba learns that he's just like Mufasa because Mufasa lives in Simba. Anyway, it was just like that. So that was the bathroom. Now, you might be surprised to hear that when I left the bathroom, I told the shaman, I think I need more medicine. But indeed I did. And so I took a booster, and so this, okay. You all are like experts out there. It's Hape, right? Okay, thank you. I knew, this crowd knows more about the stuff I'm talking about than I do. Because it doesn't look like it's spelled like that, unfortunately. And I made a big mistake in ceremony calling it this thing. It's not that. Which is a tobacco and ash infusion that they blow up your nose, which is fucking intense. I don't even know how to describe it exactly. It's people around me just told me that I was shaking significantly. It helps the medicine, helps you sort of release energy is how I would describe it. Then after that, I actually took a second, much larger dose of ayahuasca, and that's where shit really got interesting. All of this was just fun stuff. So after the second, much larger dose, I felt like I was decomposing. This is a little bit more accurate representation of how I felt. But yes, I sat back on the ground and I felt the skin melt off my face. I felt my eyes pool back. I felt my muscles start to go and my skeleton start to disintegrate, and I felt completely like I was going into the earth. But here's the thing. I kind of liked being a spooky skeleton. As weird as that sounds, I loved it. I was like, oh my God, my jaw's over there, I'm all weird, and I was digging it. A guy named Doug Jones played a character named, oh God, what was his character name? Billy on Hocus Pocus. And he played a zombie, and he talked about the feeling of being in the zombie makeup as feeling just fabulous. And that's how I felt a little bit. I felt like a fabulous skeleton. I don't know how that's possible, but that's ayahuasca. Anyway, you become a fabulous skeleton. I kind of was thinking, all right, here's the point where I ask the entities my deep, dark questions, because I'd gone in, I've overcome a lot of depression, I'm sort of struggling with some anxiety, and I want to know what I'm afraid of, and I want to know why I feel worthless. So I thought, I'm going to ask this entity this question, my intention. So I go up to an entity and I say, tell me why I feel worthless. And in response, the entity said, here, watch the entire movie Inception. And that's what I did. I watched the entire movie Inception in my mind, which apparently I know really well. I don't know how that's possible, but I know that movie frame for frame, or at least like a part of my brain like stored it away just for this moment. And I'm still not sure how that relates to that. Okay. So yeah, I mean, the point of this slide is just like, ayahuasca is a little confusing. It's a little hard to decipher. Thank you. Okay, so then I went back to comatose. This is a little bit more of a representation of how I feel, kind of in the ground. There we go. That's a hydraulic press for you. Then there was the aftermath. So this was kind of when everybody was starting to get out of their experiences. I was still a little bit like heavy into it, but I was trying to rally just to go to bed. My eyes hurt really bad because even though I had spent most of the night with my eyelids closed, I knew that I was seeing lights the whole time. And my pupils were like pinpricks. And so usually you give your eyes some rest where your pupils can dilate and relax, and mine hadn't relaxed for a really long time, so they were really hurting. I also had extremely chapped lips. This is the one photo I took on ayahuasca, so there you go. My lips were extremely chapped because I spent the entire night with my mouth open, completely agape at what I was seeing with my eyes closed. And then finally, my back was extremely sore because I had just completely given in to a relatively hardwood floor. So I was pretty frickin' wrecked, but that said, I was also really out of it, which is why none of us seemed to notice the fact that around 2 a.m., the firefighters came in to our ceremony space. Real story, very true. So a candle had fallen over and the wax was creating smoke. There wasn't actually a fire, but the smoke set off the smoke alarm. The fire department came in, apparently. And I will say, I won't give too many identifying details, but this was in Woodstock. So I'm pretty sure this was like the third ceremony they'd busted that night. So it wasn't that bad. As a matter of fact, none of us even really got up. We were all just like, hey, are you real, or are you a firefighting entity? Cool. Anyway, when I was looking up GIFs for this slide, I came across this one of this firefighter who's laughing. And the backstory behind this, total side note, is that he was at the scene of a pot warehouse that burned down and was being treated for smoke inhalation. The next day, like as is traditional with some ceremonies, we did wachuma. The way I would describe the difference is if this is ayahuasca, this is wachuma. Ayahuasca is a little hard to decipher. Wachuma is a little bit more like, sit the fuck down, here's what you need to know. So that was Wachuma. One thing that was interesting after the experience, I forgot to turn off my activity tracker watch, which I kept on the whole time. So here was the hike that we went on before we showed up around 5 o'clock. And now here's something that's kind of spooky. You see this like sort of like gray marked out area. This means the watch thinks I'm not wearing it. But I was wearing it the entire time. And so I don't know what that's about. It's possible that my heart rate was extremely low. Maybe the entities don't like Fitbits. It completely marks me as not even lying down. It'll get your heart rate for lying down. It's just, I wasn't there. So I had a difficult integration. The reason I had a difficult integration was because immediately after my experience, I started feeling like, what the fuck am I doing? I'm pretending to believe in energy and spirits, and I studied science. What the fuck? And I'm like culturally appropriating something, and this whole thing is incredibly dumb. And I was saying words in other languages, like I fucking knew what that meant. I just completely tore down the whole experience. I was like, you're just a child playing dress up to feel better. I felt bad because of that. I also felt bad because I had come up with this game theoretic model where I was like, I'm doing all this work to lower my ego defenses and to go out into the world as, a person who's willing to cooperate. But nobody else in New York City is doing the same work, and so I'm always getting rejected, and eventually I'm going to start rejecting them, and we're all going to reject each other, and we're going to end up in a no-win situation, sort of a la game theory. Luckily, I do this show, and so I talk to a lot of cool people I want to be on it. And so I talked to this woman, Rebecca Hayden, who I really wanted to have on the show. She does a podcast called Ayahuasca Talks. And so what she told me was just two questions. She said, whose voice is telling you that you feel like a child? And I realized it was my parents' voice. It was even their diction, the way that word choices that they would use. It was a feeling that the values I grew up with were so shaken by the experience that I had that they were violently reacting to that feeling and trying to completely take all the meaning out of my original experience. And then for this paradigm I came up with, she said, whose system? And I realized I had created that system because this system is at least predictable. And when it's predictable, even if I know that I'm getting fucked every time and that we're going to end up in a steady, non-cooperative state, it's a system I've built that I have control over, as opposed to the real world, which is much more chaotic. She was filled with gems of integrational wisdom that I just want to quickly share. Meaning is not sense, because I was having a difficult time making sense of the experience. She said, ayahuasca heals from the outside in. When I was describing feeling very sore, she was saying that ayahuasca sort of feels like keys being jiggled in front of you, and the lights and the visuals are all there to distract you, while the ayahuasca does real healing on your central nervous system and deeper parts of your anatomy. Our desire to be high is natural because we innately know there's a better state to be in. And that, to me, is why I do this show. I'm fascinated by why humans want to get high. And I think that that's a really interesting theory, that we know innately there's a better state to be in. So that was my integration. It was not as easy as other integrations I've heard about, but the point is, and also, by the way, she has an awesome podcast. You should subscribe and donate. It's on Patreon. It'll be in a link later. Anyway, so that's pretty much my experience. Or is it? Integration continues for years, so that's not really the end. It's really kind of more like the beginning.